My brother stole my startup idea while I worked 70-hour weeks, so I exposed him publicly and took everything he thought he'd hidden successfully. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I poured every ounce of my time, energy, and savings into building my startup. It wasn't just a project for MIT, it was my life. I spent 70 hours a week in front of a screen, coding, designing, brainstorming, and pitching. Weekends, they didn't exist. Friends would text me, asking if I wanted to grab a drink or go out for dinner, but I'd always turn them down. I'm too busy, I'd say, and that was the truth. I was too busy. I had a dream that only I could see clearly, and no one else seemed to understand. The product I was working on had the potential to change everything. It could put me on the map, maybe even make me rich. But every time I told someone about it, they looked at me with that skeptical smile, like they were humoring a kid. My parents thought I was being unrealistic. My friends called me obsessive. They said I was wasting my 20s chasing some pipe dream. But there was one person who always acted like he believed in me. My brother, Alex. He was supportive in his own way. He'd show up to my product demos, clap me on the back, and say things like, "You've got this, bro." He'd watch me work, sometimes even staying late into the night to keep me company, cracking jokes, or making small talk. He'd say things like, "Man, you know what you should do? Skip the small stuff and just go for the big play. You could speed things up by cutting a few corners." At first, I thought nothing of it, just Alex being Alex, always trying to find the shortcuts. But deep down, something nagged at me. Maybe it was the way he'd ask about investors, about the tech stack I was using, or how he always seemed to know just a little too much about what I was doing. I shook it off. He's my brother, right? He's supposed to be supportive. And honestly, when I was drowning in code and deadlines, having him there, even if it was just to watch me work, felt like a tiny bit of comfort. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running a race I couldn't win. My friends admired my dedication, but they also didn't get it. They didn't see the nights I spent awake, the endless cups of coffee that kept me from passing out on my keyboard. They didn't see how isolated I was becoming, how the startup had consumed me. I was alone in this, even if I had Alex by my side. And that's when I realized, I was willing to sacrifice everything for this. For a chance at success. But what if I was sacrificing the one thing I thought I could trust the most, my brother? I didn't know it then, but that thought would soon haunt me. Things started to feel like they were moving, but not fast enough. I was making progress, but it was slow and exhausting. Every pitch I made to investors felt like a gamble, and every email I sent seemed to vanish into a black hole. I was constantly second-guessing myself. Was this the right direction? Was I wasting my time? But I couldn't stop. I was too far in. The startup was my obsession. My baby Alex was there, like always, hanging around the office, talking me through the rough patches. "Don't worry, bro. You're getting there. It's all about persistence," he'd say, acting like the supportive older sibling. I appreciated it. At least I had someone who wasn't judging me. But even his words started to feel like a broken record. He would say stuff like, "If I were you, I'd just go bigger, faster. You could take it to the next level in half the time if you weren't so focused on the small details." It always sounded like advice, but it never really sat right with me. I remember one late night, probably around 2 a.m. when we were working together in my tiny office. The hum of my computer, the only sound breaking the silence. Alex was pacing around the room, his voice cutting through the quiet. "You should be thinking bigger, man," he said again. "Don't waste your time on the small stuff. Who cares about the details when you could be scaling this thing up, like today?" I looked up at him, rubbing my eyes from the exhaustion. He was acting like he knew something I didn't. Maybe he did. But that was the problem. Every time I started to feel like I was on track, he'd nudge me off course. It didn't make sense, and I told myself I was just overthinking it. He was my brother, after all. He had my best interests at heart, right? I couldn't help but wonder, though, did he see this as something more? Was he just playing the supportive brother, or was there something else going on? That night, I brushed it off. After all, who else was there to help me? My friends, they were too busy with their own lives and my family. Well, they didn't get it. They didn't get me. The next morning, I got a call from an investor. They wanted to talk more, wanted to see my numbers. My heart raced, my stomach twisted in knots. This could be the break I needed. This could finally prove that everything I'd been doing was worth it. But just as I was about to hang up, Alex barged into my office. "Hey, I've been thinking," he started, with that confident grin. "What if we went after the bigger investors? You know the ones I'm talking about, those high-stakes players. You could really blow this up, man." My heart skipped a beat. He was talking like it was his idea, like he was the one running the show. He had no idea how much effort I'd put into these investors already. The thought hit me like a ton of bricks. Was Alex pushing me? Or was he using me? It wasn't until a few weeks later that things really started to feel off. I had been working non-stop, pushing the product closer to its first official demo. The pressure was suffocating, but I couldn't back down. I had come too far. Then, one afternoon, I received an email that changed everything. It was from an investor. I'd pitched a few months ago, one I thought had long forgotten about me. The subject line read, "Exciting updates about your idea." I opened it, hoping to see something positive. Instead, I found a generic update, but there was something in the tone that made me pause. It wasn't about the idea I'd pitched. It was about a new startup, the exact same product, but under a different name. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. No way was this happening. The investor was referring to new developments based on the work I had presented. Only they were acting like they were the ones behind it. It felt like my whole world came crashing down in that moment. But there was more. At the bottom of the email, I saw the name Alex.Alex. My pulse shot up as I scrambled through my notes. No way. I had pitched the idea, had been building it for months, and now my own brother, someone I trusted, was connected to another venture, one that looked too familiar, too similar. The realization hit me like a freight train. Alex had been in on it all along. I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled as I shot Alex a text. "What's going on?" "I just saw your name tied to a new startup, ... With my idea, he didn't reply for hours. When he finally did, it was short. Too short. "It's not what you think, man. Let's talk later." But I couldn't wait. I couldn't just pretend like everything was fine. I started going through our old conversations, digging for anything that would confirm what I had been suspecting. And there, it was hidden in plain sight. Subtle hints, references to how easy it would be to skip a few steps or how we could take a different direction. I remembered him asking me for my investor contact list, offering to help out with connections. I had given him everything, believing it was for the good of the startup, not realizing that he was taking advantage of my trust. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My brother had taken what was mine. And worse, he thought I wouldn't notice. He had the audacity to think he could just take the fruit of my labor and claim it for his own. I shot him a final message. "Don't bother. We're done." But he didn't stop there. I didn't know it yet, but Alex had already gone a step further. He was about to do something that would change everything. The next few days felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. Every moment I spent in front of my computer was consumed with trying to piece together the evidence. I went through emails, old pitch decks, meeting notes, anything I could find. But the more I uncovered, the more it became clear. Alex hadn't just stolen my idea. He had been planning this for months. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My own flesh and blood had used the trust I gave him to systematically take everything from me. The worst part, he thought I was too naive to notice. As I looked back, I realized he'd been asking all the right questions that only someone who was planning to steal would ask. A week later, I got another blow. Alex had taken the idea, polished it up, and presented it to one of the investors I'd been courting. I could see it happening in real time. He was using my pitch to secure his round of funding. My heart sank as I read the email subject. Exciting new partnership opportunity with Alex. I stared at the screen, frozen. They had practically given him the green light. I knew the game was over. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. This was sabotage. My hard work, my sacrifice, was being hijacked right in front of me. I called my closest investor, the one who had been the most interested in my startup. I needed to tell them the truth. "I'm not sure how to say this," I started, my voice trembling, "but I think my brother has stolen my idea, and he's presenting it as his own." There was a long silence on the other end. "Are you sure?" they asked, clearly skeptical. "I've got the proof," I said, my throat tight. "He's been in my office for months. He's seen everything. He's got the product, the pitch, and now he's got the investors." There was another long pause. "Send me everything you have." Now, I hung up, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. I had just exposed my own brother. But I couldn't sit back and let him destroy everything I'd worked for. I compiled everything I could find, the emails, the messages, the timestamps of my code and sent them over. Every piece of evidence was like a dagger in my chest. This wasn't just business. This was family. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from Alex. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, everything spiraled faster than I could process. My phone buzzed with notifications, meals messages, and missed calls. It was like the world had exploded overnight. The investor I'd sent the evidence to had already made a decision. My worst fears were confirmed. Alex was using my idea, my work, my passion, and passing it off as his own. I couldn't breathe. Every time I looked at my phone, I saw another update, another blow to my dignity. Alex had gotten the funding. He was moving forward with the project, with my project, as if nothing had ever happened. The feeling of betrayal twisted in my gut like a knife. And then came the message from him. The one I knew would come, but it still hit me like a freight train. "Don't do this. I didn't take your idea. I'm just trying to help you. You're making a big mistake, and I'm the one who's going to suffer from it." I stared at the message for a long time. I knew his words were a lie. I knew exactly what he was doing, gaslighting me, trying to make me feel guilty, trying to flip the script like I was the bad guy. But I wasn't buying it anymore. He had crossed the line. There was no going back. I couldn't let it slide. My brother had taken everything from me, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. So, I did what I had to do. I called the investor who had been so supportive of me. "I need you to listen," I said, my voice tight. "Alex is using everything I've worked on, and he's acting like it's his. I've been sending him updates, talking to him about my progress, and he's using that to secure funding. He's making it look like he's the one who came up with the idea." There was a long pause before the investor replied. "We've already signed an agreement with Alex," they said slowly. "We thought the opportunity was a good fit." I could feel my blood boil. "I don't care about the agreement," I shot back. "I have the proof. I've got everything. I'll send it to you right now." I sent them everything, the emails, the pitch decks, the timestamps on my code. I laid it all out. If they still wanted to back Alex, fine. But I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I sat there, waiting, my mind racing. This was it. This was my shot to make sure he didn't get away with it. A few minutes later, the response came. "Thank you for the information. We'll be in touch shortly." A part of me wanted to feel relieved, but all I felt was numb. What was the point of proving everything if it was already too late? Just as I was about to shut down for the day, my phone buzzed again. It was from Alex. "This isn't over. You've made a mistake you'll regret." My hands trembled as I read it. I didn't respond. I couldn't, but I knew one thing for sure. Things were only going to get worse. Before they got better, the days that followed were the darkest I'd ever lived through. My phone buzzed constantly, but no one had anything positive to say. The investor I'd sent the evidence to finally called. They told me they were reassessing the situation, which was corporate speak for, "We'll be siding with Alex because he's already proven himself with the funding." It felt like I was losing the battle before I even had a chance to fight. The worst part was that Alex wasn't just winning in the business world. He was winning in the family, too. My parents, who had always treated me like the responsible, level-headed son, started asking me why I was making things so difficult. They sided with Alex immediately. "He's just trying to make something of himself," they said. "Why can't you be more like him? He's got vision. He's taking risks." I could feel the bile rising in my throat. It was like everyone was turning their back on me, on the years of hard work, the sacrifices I'd made, the nights spent awake just thinking of how I could get this damn startup off the ground. And for what? So my brother could swoop in and take it all from me. It wasn't just the business that hurt. It was the betrayal from my family, the people who were supposed to have my back no matter what. They didn't see the nights I spent losing sleep over code. They didn't see the pressure I was under trying to prove I could make this work. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers, piles of paperwork, and half-finished pitch decks, feeling completely numb. I hadn't left the apartment in days, too ashamed to face anyone. The world was crumbling around me, and I was powerless to stop it. My phone rang again, and this time, it was from one of the investors I'd been trying to work with. "We've decided to go with Alex," they said bluntly. "We believe his approach is more in line with our vision." I heard the finality in their voice, like a door slamming shut. I felt sick to my stomach. It wasn't just about the startup anymore, it was about my future. My credibility, my family. I had nothing left. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. I had built something only to watch it be torn apart by the one person I thought would never betray me. Alex had already moved on, taking what I'd created and leaving me in the dust. As I hung up the phone, I thought about what Alex had said to me a few days earlier. "You've made a mistake you'll regret." I laughed bitterly. No, the mistake wasn't mine. It was trusting him. Trusting my own blood. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty space in front of me. I had no idea what to do next. But then, as if a switch flipped inside me, a new feeling started to rise. Anger. Deep, cold rage. I wasn't going to let this go. Not like this. I was done being the victim. The anger that had been simmering inside me started to turn into something more dangerous: determination. I wasn't going to let Alex take everything from me and walk away I had spent months building this idea from scratch, bleeding sweat and tears into it, and now he was about to destroy it all with a few well-placed lies. I started putting a plan together. I knew that Alex thought he had already won. He probably thought I'd back down, that I'd crawl away and let him enjoy the success he'd stolen from me. But I was done with that. I wasn't going to sit in the corner and let him have his way. The first thing I did was gather my evidence. I went back through my emails, my old meeting notes, timestamps from my code, everything. I knew it was risky. Alex had already manipulated everyone around us, but I had to be sure. The investors, the tech community, everyone who mattered. If they knew the truth, they couldn't possibly ignore it. The next step was even more critical: timing. I had to make my move carefully. If I acted too early, Alex could spin it as a desperate attempt to get back at him. If I waited too long, he'd have already cemented his position, and I'd look like a fool. I spent the next few days working late into the night, organizing the evidence and drafting a plan. I pulled up old pitch videos I had sent to investors, screenshots of conversations where Alex had acted like he was just helping. I printed out emails showing when I'd first developed the idea, comparing them with emails from Alex trying to pitch it as his own. It was all coming together. But I still had one thing to figure out. How could I get everyone to believe me over Alex? He was smooth, charming, the golden child of the family. Everyone loved him. They always had. But I knew deep down that I had something he didn't. I had the truth. I had the proof. Then came the final piece. I started contacting the key investors. Without Alex, I was done being in his shadow. I reached out to them one by one and laid everything out. "I know this looks like a mess," I wrote in the emails, "but I've built this from the ground up, and I'm the one who has been working day and night to make this happen." The replies were slow at first, but I could tell something was changing. They were listening. One by one, the investors I'd once pitched began to ask for more information. Start looking at the timelines, the development stages, and the conversations I'd provided. I had their attention now. Alex had no idea what was coming. I'd started to feel like I was in control again, like maybe, just maybe, I could claw my way back. But I wasn't going to make any mistakes. This had to be airtight. There could be no loopholes, no chance for Alex to wriggle free and spin the situation into something that worked in his favor. This wasn't just about the startup anymore. It was about everything: my reputation, my future, my relationship with my family. I wasn't going to let it all slip through my fingers. I spent the next few nights hunting down every single detail I could find that proved I was the original creator. Every email I sent to investors, every message I exchanged with colleagues, every line of code I'd written, every piece of digital history was my weapon now. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I knew Alex was already working on damage control, and if I didn't move fast, he'd have the upper hand. I began pulling up old versions of my product, the early designs, the initial code that had eventually become the polished product Alex was presenting as his own. I had records, timestamps, even receipts for domain names and software I'd purchased to get things off the ground. Everything. If anyone looked closely, they would see it how I had been working on this long before Alex ever came into the picture. But then I hit a roadblock. Some of the most damning pieces of evidence were locked behind accounts I'd created for the startup stuff that only I had access to. And in my rush to keep everything secure, I had used password managers and two-factor authentication. Normally, that would have been fine, but now I was up against a ticking clock, and it felt like the universe was conspiring against me. I spent hours resetting passwords, jumping through hoops just to get back into these accounts. I kept thinking about Alex, how he was probably sitting comfortably, making all the right moves, acting like he had nothing to hide. He didn't think I'd fight back, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him. Not this time. Finally, I got into everything. The hidden emails, the development logs, everything I needed. The timestamps were clear. The conversation threads with investors where I'd pitched the idea, and Alex had been there, making suggestions that now seemed way too close to what I'd already written. I could see how Alex had moved from being the supportive brother to the co-founder of a startup that wasn't even his to claim. It was all there, plain as day. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I wasn't just going to expose him, I was going to show the world exactly how far he'd gone to steal from me. But first, I had to contact the one person who could help me break this open, my most trusted investor, the one person who had supported me through the hardest of times. I sent the email, my hands trembling as I typed the words, laying it all out. "I need you to understand what's happening," I wrote. "Alex isn't just trying to help, he's taken everything, and I've got the proof to back it up." I attached everything: emails, timestamps, development logs, messages from Alex himself, everything. Now, it was just a matter of waiting for the inevitable storm to hit. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I got an email from my investor. The subject line was simple: "Let's talk." My heart pounded in my chest as I opened it. "I've reviewed everything you sent me. This is serious," it said. "We need to meet in person. Can you come by the office today?" I could barely breathe. This was it. My moment to finally put an end to all the lies, to expose Alex for what he really was, a thief. I had no idea how it was going to play out, but at least I had the truth on my side. I threw on a jacket and rushed out of my apartment, my mind racing with a mix of anxiety, anger, and determination. When I walked into the investor's office, they were already waiting for me. I sat down, trying to act composed, but I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead. The investor looked at me with a neutral expression, but I could tell they were trying to process everything. "I've spoken to Alex," they said quietly, "and I've got to admit, I wasn't expecting this. I've already started looking into his version of events." I held my breath, trying to steady myself. "You'll see the truth," I said firmly. "Everything I've sent you, it's all real. He's been lying from the start." The investor nodded slowly, clearly torn. "We need to figure out how to handle this," they said, leaning forward. "It's not just about the product anymore. It's about relationships. It's about relationships that's been broken." I wanted to scream. Of course, it was about the product. It was my idea, my work, my sweat, my sacrifice. But I knew better than to lash out now. I couldn't let my emotions take over. Not when I was so close to making him pay for what he'd done. Just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Alex had messaged me. "You don't know what you're doing," it read. "You're making a huge mistake. If you keep this up, you'll destroy both of us. I won't let you do that." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was no longer just about business. This was personal. Alex wasn't just trying to save his career, he was trying to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty for exposing the truth. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. I glanced back at the investor, who was watching me closely. "I don't care about saving face anymore," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I care about what's right, and Alex has crossed a line. I'm not going to let him get away with it." There was a long pause. The investors sat back in their chair, considering my words carefully. "Okay," they said finally. "We'll help you, but this is going to get messy." I nodded. I was ready as I left the office. I felt a mix of relief and dread. The storm was just beginning. The battle with Alex was about to go public hand. I had no idea how far he'd go to cover his tracks. But one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. The days that followed felt like a blur. The calm before the storm was over, and everything was about to change. I kept my phone close, waiting for an update from my investor, knowing that once things went public, there would be no going back. But the anticipation of what was to come didn't stop the fear from creeping in. Alex had been unusually quiet for the past few days, almost as if he knew the walls were closing in on him. I knew he was out there, working damage control, trying to protect what he'd stolen. The silence made it all the more unnerving. I could feel the tension building, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I knew he'd come for me. He had no choice but to try to cover his tracks. It wasn't long before the first signs of the fallout appeared. News outlets began covering the story. Tech startup founders at odds over originality of ideas. One headline read, "Brothers in battle over ownership of innovative product," read another. It was everywhere. The media was loving the drama, spinning it into a story of sibling rivalry gone wrong. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was the truth, the ugly, raw reality, that Alex had taken everything from me. I watched in horror as the narrative started to shift. Alex was trying to paint himself as the victim, claiming I had betrayed his trust and misunderstood his intentions. His version of events was slick, rehearsed, and convincing. He played the part of the supportive brother how he'd only wanted to help, and how he never meant to steal my idea. He had everyone believing it. But then, something I didn't expect happened. The investor I'd been working with, the one who had seen everything, the one who knew the truth, decided to go public with the evidence I had sent them. They issued a statement explaining how they had been made aware of the situation and how they had reviewed all the facts. They confirmed my version of events. Alex's carefully crafted facade started to crack. The media coverage shifted. I watched in real time as the story went from sibling rivalry to betrayal in the tech world. Alex tried to salvage his image, but the damage was already done. The investor's statement was the final nail in the coffin. Investors pulled out. Articles started to pour in, exposing the truth of what had happened. Alex tried to deny it, of course. He made more excuses, tried to blame everything on misunderstandings, even claimed that I was jealous of his success. But it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. The public now knew the truth, and with that, the power shifted. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would, watching Alex squirm as the world saw him for what he really was, someone who had stolen from his own. Brother wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. In some ways, it felt empty. Maybe it was because I was still processing the loss. I still had the startup in my hands, but I'd lost so much more than that: my trust in my family. My belief that people would do the right thing. But as Alex's reputation crumbled, as the people who had once supported him started to turn away, I couldn't help but feel a cold sense of justice. This was the payback I had worked for, the truth finally coming to light. I had fought back, and I had won. Alex had taken from me, but in the end, I had exposed him for what he was, and that was enough. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind. My phone buzzed with calls, emails, and texts. The tech world was abuzz with the fallout from Alex's betrayal. Investors, who had once turned me away, were now reaching out to offer new opportunities. My story had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when trust is abused. And the business world had taken notice. But even as the offers and congratulations poured in, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. It was like winning a battle, but losing a part of yourself in the process. I had reclaimed my startup, yes, but the emotional toll was undeniable. My brother, the one person I thought I could count on, had destroyed everything. It wasn't just the money or the company that hurt, it was the betrayal itself. The way Alex had chosen to destroy me for his own gain. And no amount of success could ever replace that. The legal side of things took a bit longer than I anticipated. I had to go through the process of reasserting control over the intellectual property, making sure everything was locked down. But when it was all said and done, I had the company back. Every contract, every pitch, every piece of intellectual property, it was mine again. It felt surreal. There I was, standing in front of a conference room full of new investors, pitching my product like I had done countless times before. But this time, it was different. The confidence I had once lacked was now fully present, tempered by the scars of betrayal, but also hardened by them. I had been through hell, but I had come out stronger. I was about to sign a new deal of partnership that would help scale the company in ways I had only dreamed of when I first started. The old doubts I had carried, the ones that told me I wasn't good enough, that my dream would never become reality, were gone. I had fought for this. I had taken back what was mine, but as I looked at the contracts in front of me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed inside me, something I wasn't ready to admit. The person I had been, the idealist, the dreamer, was gone. In his place was someone more guarded, more cynical, and more wary of trust. It wasn't just Alex's betrayal that had changed MIT, was everything that had happened since then. As I signed the papers, the weight of the moment hit me. This was a victory, but it wasn't a clean one. And no matter how much success I achieved from here on out, I would never forget the cost. Just as I was about to put my pen down, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mom. "We need to talk," it read. The cold weight in my stomach grew heavier as I read the words. I knew what was coming. Alex had already started calling the family, spinning his own version of the story. He had painted himself as the victim, as someone who had been wronged by me. The same Alex who had stolen from me was now playing the martyr, trying to turn everyone against me. I wasn't ready to face him again. But I knew that this battle wasn't just over. It was only just beginning. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. The message from my mom felt like the last shoe dropping. Alex had already started his damage control with the family, trying to rewrite the narrative. I could hear his voice in my head, playing the victim, painting me as the villain who had wronged him. I had always known Alex was manipulative, but I never thought he'd go this far. I debated not responding, just letting it go. But I knew I couldn't. If I was going to rebuild, if I was going to move forward, I had to confront this. So I texted back, "I'll be there tonight." I couldn't stomach another confrontation with Alex, but I also knew that this was the last hurdle. The final test? This wasn't about the startup anymore. It wasn't even about the money. It was about my family, my future, and whether or not I could ever truly trust anyone again. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was heavy. My mom was sitting on the couch, eyes red from crying. My dad was pacing the living room, clearly agitated. The tension was unbearable. Alex wasn't there, but I could feel his presence looming over the entire room. He had already poisoned their minds. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to lay everything out. I started talking slowly, carefully, making sure they understood what had happened. I told them everything, how Alex had been involved from the start, how he'd manipulated me, how he'd taken my work and presented it as his own. I didn't leave anything out, even the hardest parts, the moments when I'd trusted him completely, when I had believed in him as my brother. My mom was the first to speak. "I can't believe he would do this," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. My dad stood there, shaking his head. "You're sure? You're really sure?" he asked, disbelief still in his voice. "I have the proof," I said, my voice steady. "I've sent it to everyone. It's all there. The emails, the times, the meetings. Wasn't easy. There were tears, arguments, and a lot of hurt. But in the end, they started to understand. Slowly, the fog of denial lifted, and they saw Alex for what he was. I thought that would be enough, that this would give me some kind of closure. But it didn't. It couldn't. The truth had come out, but it didn't heal the wounds. Alex didn't come to that meeting. He stayed silent, knowing that there was no way to twist the truth anymore. The damage had been done. But what struck me the hardest wasn't the fact that I had reclaimed what was mine. It was the realization that no matter how much I succeeded, no matter how many doors opened for me, things would never be the same. I had lost trust, not just in Alex, but in people, in family. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Betrayal cuts deeper than anything else. But in the end, I did get something back, something more important than the startup, more important than the business, more important than any of the success or money. I got my peace back. I got the satisfaction of knowing I fought for what was mine, that I exposed the truth, and that I stood up for myself when I could have stayed silent. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real victory.